This is an audiobook created by Subconscious Key Studio. Take a moment, if you will, and just listen. Listen to that sound, the drip of water in a cavern. It's a sound that echoes across millennia and across the landscape of the human soul. It is the sound of Plato's cave. Imagine, as he did over 2,000 years ago, prisoners chained from birth, their heads fixed, unable to turn. Behind them, a fire burns. Between the fire and the prisoners, people walk, carrying figures of animals and objects, casting shadows on the wall in front of the prisoners. This is all they have ever known. These flickering shades are their entire reality, their world, their truth. Now, listen closer. Hear the marketplace, the life, the energy, the human drama. This is another cave, a real one. This is the world of a 13th century scholar and poet, a man named Jalaluddin Rumi. He, too, was a prisoner, though his chains were not of iron, but of intellect, of dogma, of a life mapped out by tradition and expectation. He too lived in a world of shadows, until the day he was forcibly turned toward the light. This is the story of two caves, separated by centuries, yet united by a single, universal human journey. It is the journey from illusion to truth, from a world of echoes to the source of the sound, from the comforting darkness into the terrifying, and then liberating brilliance of the sun. This is the allegory of the cave, not as a dusty philosophical concept, but as a living, breathing human drama, modernized through the fiery life and timeless poetry of Rumi. Over this next hour, we will walk this path together. To truly understand the magnitude of Rumi's transformation, we must first appreciate the comfort and security of the cave he inhabited. It is the year 1244. The city is Konya, a flourishing center of culture and learning in the Anatolian region, a jewel of the Seljuk Empire. And here we find Rumi. But he is not yet the ecstatic poet whirling in divine love. He is Maulana Jalaluddin, the Master, a title of immense respect. He is a professor of Islamic law, a theologian, a preacher who draws large, admiring crowds. His cave is not one of poverty or ignorance. It is a cave gilded with knowledge, prestige, and deep societal respect. His world is one of intricate rules and profound certainties. He explains the Sharia, the sacred law, with brilliance and clarity. He illuminates the shadows on the wall for his students, the shadows of right and wrong, the permissible and the forbidden. He is a master of the map, and everyone agrees his map is the correct one. He is married, a father, a pillar of his community. This is a life many of us would aspire to, a life of clear purpose, recognition, and intellectual safety. But outside the warm, illuminated walls of his lecture hall, the world is shuddering with violence and uncertainty. The Crusades have carved scars across the landscape and the human spirit. From the east, the Mongol war machine, a force of seemingly apocalyptic power, is sweeping westward, leaving smoldering cities and rivers of refugees in its wake. In such times of terror, people do not seek the disorienting sun. They retreat deeper into the cave. They cling to the familiar shadows, to rigid doctrines, to tribal identities, to the authority of figures like Rumi. His cave is a sanctuary, a fortress of tradition in a world falling apart. And yet, on the edges of this society, in the deserts and the back alleys, there are others. The Sufis, the mystics. They are the wild, free souls who speak a different language. They are not content with just following the map. They speak of burning it and becoming the territory. They talk not of obeying a distant God out of fear, but of loving a present God with a ferocity that consumes the self. They are the ones who have, according to Plato's allegory, escaped the cave, seen the sun, and returned. And to the gatekeepers of the cave, they are dangerous heretics, madmen, a threat to the stable, shadow-based reality everyone depends on. The stage is set. A comfortable, revered teacher sits securely in his cave, and a walking, talking earthquake is about to enter. And then he appears, Shams of Tabriz. A wandering dervish, his clothes ragged, his eyes burning with a light that is neither scholarly nor sane. He is raw, untamed, and utterly uncompromising. He is not impressed by Rumi's titles or his crowds. He is the embodiment of the outside world, the one who has stared directly into the sun and carries its fire in his gaze. Their first meeting is one of the most electrifying moments in the history of spirituality. The stories say Rumi was riding his donkey, surrounded by his students, a king in his domain, his head filled with the complex shadows of theological debate. Shams steps into his path and grabs the reins of his donkey. He looks up at the great scholar and asks a question that is less a question and more a spear thrown at the heart of his entire existence. Who was the greater spiritual teacher? Shams demands. The prophet Mohammed or the Sufi mystic Bastami? The students gasp. It is a blasphemous, impossible question designed to trap him. Rumi, the master of the shadows, gives the orthodox, scholarly answer, praising both but upholding the primacy of the prophet. And then Shams delivers the blow that shatters the cave. He says, "No." Bastami said, "Glory to me. How great is my station." He had annihilated his ego so completely in God that he could speak from that union. Mohammed, in his profound humility, always said, "I cannot count your praises. I am just a servant." Shams was not asking for a doctrinal answer. He was asking, have you ever experienced the fire itself, Rumi? Or do you just spend your life describing the shadows it casts? In that single moment, the ground beneath Rumi's feet vanishes. The walls of his cave of knowledge crumble to dust. The respected jurist, the pillar of the community, is gone, replaced by a desperate seeker. A man who has just realized he has been starving to death at a banquet of descriptions of food. What follows is an obsession. Rumi abandons his lectures. He forgets his students. For months, he locks himself away with this wild man, Shams. They engage in what is called sobit, spiritual communion, a conversation that is not an exchange of words, but a fusion of souls. Shams becomes his son. The old life, the life of shadows, the titles, the social obligations, the theological debates becomes utterly meaningless gray and lifeless. This is the first, rapturous, and profoundly disruptive stage of enlightenment. It is not peaceful, it is a revolution, and revolutions create counter-revolutions. Rumi's family is confused and hurt. His son, Aladdin, feels a bitter betrayal. His students, who once adored him, now seethe with jealousy. The city is scandalized. "Our master has gone mad," they whisper. The pressure builds until it becomes unbearable, and Shams, the catalyst, is forced to flee Konya. This begins Rumi's great struggle, his true crucible. The loss of Shams does not plunge him back into the old cave. It throws him into a deeper, more terrifying abyss. The cave of his own absolute grief and longing. This is the human pain. This is the doubt that every seeker must face. He writes poem after poem of desperate, aching love. "Why should I seek? I am the same as he. His essence speaks through me. I have been looking for myself," he cries. He searches for Shams in Damascus, sending his son to plead for his return. Was it all a hallucination, a beautiful, cruel dream? Has the sun been extinguished just as he learned what light was? And then, a miracle, Shams returns. The reunion is even more ecstatic, but the envy and hatred of the community have only festered. They cannot bear to see their master so utterly consumed by this outsider. And then, the ultimate, unthinkable tragedy occurs. Shams vanishes again, this time forever. The historical record is murky, but the persistent, haunting belief is that he was murdered, most likely by a conspiracy that included Rumi's own son, Aladdin. The sun has not just set. It has been violently, brutally murdered by the prisoners who preferred the safety of their shadows. Rumi is left utterly alone in the most profound darkness imaginable. The light is gone. The guide is dead. He is left with nothing but the searing, unbearable pain of absence. And here, at the absolute zero point of despair, at the very bottom of the well of grief, the great alchemy occurs. When there is nowhere else to go, when the pain is so total it becomes a kind of fire, the self begins to burn away. Rumi stops searching for Shams in the streets of Damascus or in the faces of other men. He turns his gaze inward, and there, in the silent, vast emptiness that the pain has carved out within him, he finds him. He realizes a truth that shatters his grief into 1,000,000 pieces of light. Shams was never the sun itself. Shams was the one who loved him so fiercely that he turned Rumi's face toward his own inner sun. The beloved and the lover were not two, they were one. The separation was the final, great illusion. His grief, his crucible, was not a punishment, but the sacred fire that was forging his new being. He stops writing poems about Shams and begins to write as Shams. He signs his great collection of lyric poems, the Divani Shamsi Tabrizi, not with his own name, but with the name of his beloved. He doesn't just describe the light, he becomes a source of it. The drop has realized it is the ocean. His poetry becomes a volcano of ecstatic wisdom erupting from this union. Let's sit with a few of these lines, not as literary quotes, but as maps to the territory he now inhabited.
The wound is the place where the light enters you.
Let this one sink in. For Rumi, this was not a comforting platitude. It was a stark, lived reality. The wound of losing shams was not something to be healed, sutured, and forgotten. It was to be kept open, revered, acknowledged as the very channel, the precise opening, through which the light of a vaster, divine consciousness could flood into the small, confined space of his individual self. Your greatest pain, he whispers to us across the centuries, is not your curse. It is your potential gateway.
Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form.
He is not speaking of a simple, linear reincarnation. He is pointing to the fundamental, dynamic nature of a universe that is God's continuous, creative act. The form of Shams the man was a beautiful, temporary vessel. When that vessel was shattered, the essence it contained, the unconditional love, the catalytic wisdom, did not vanish. It could not. It simply poured itself into a new form, the form of Rumi the poet, the form of the Mathnawi, the form of the whirling dervish. The love never left the system. It only changed its garment.
You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop.
This is the ultimate, mind-shattering destination of the freed prisoner. He has not just seen the sun. He has realized, with every fiber of his being, that he is made of sunlight itself. The individual self, the drop with all its fears, its ego, its separate identity, has dissolved into the knowing of its true nature as the divine, limitless ocean. This is the core of his entire message. The cave was the illusion of a separate, small, lonely self. The sun is the reality of our infinite, connected, divine nature. His poetry, his whirling, these were not performances. They were expressions of this oceanic reality. When he whirled, he was not a man trying to get somewhere. He was the cosmos itself, revolving in its own ecstatic, loving dance. So we are left with the question that matters most. What does this journey, this epic of a 13th century soul, have to do with you here now? With your life, with your stresses, your joys, your quiet despairs, and your fleeting moments of peace? The answer is everything. Because the caves we inhabit today are just more complex, more seductive, more digitally enhanced. The chains are made of subtler stuff. The cave of the algorithm, think of your social media feed, your news stream. It is a perfect, personalized digital cave. It shows you shadows that confirm your biases, that outrage you, that tempt you. It learns what you like and gives you more of it, building a prison of your own preferences, making it harder and harder to believe there is a reality outside of it. We mistake this curated, filtered shadow show for the whole, messy, beautiful truth. The cave of professional identity. Like Rumi the scholar, we so often become our job titles. I am a CEO. I am an influencer. I am a failure. We pour our entire sense of self into these roles, these modern-day robes of prestige or shame. And when the role is threatened by a layoff, a failed project, a critical comment, our entire world threatens to collapse because we have forgotten the vast, unchanging ocean of being that exists within us, independent of any title. The cave of consumerism. Our entire economy is built on convincing us that the next shadow, the new car, the bigger house, the more exotic vacation, the perfect relationship, will finally bring us the fulfillment we seek. It is a relentless chase after flickering images on the wall, a chase that promises everything and delivers nothing lasting, always leaving us wanting, ensuring we never turn around to see the real source of joy. Rumi's legacy is not a set of abstract poems. It is a practical, fierce, and loving toolkit for our own daily liberation. In our offices, when you experience a professional betrayal, a crushing failure, your sham's moment, can you, in the midst of the pain, dare to ask, where is the light trying to enter? Can that disappointment be the force that breaks your over-identification with success and forces you to find a deeper, more resilient purpose that no balance sheet can measure? In our homes, when you feel misunderstood by your partner, frustrated by your children, or lonely in your own family, can you seek out Rumi's, field out beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing? Can you meet them not from the rigid roles of parent, child, or spouse, but from that ocean of shared being, from a place of simple, loving presence? In our relationships, can we learn to love as Rumi ultimately loved, not to possess or control, but to liberate? Can we see our beloved not as someone who exists to make us happy, but as a mirror, a shams, a divine reminder pointing us relentlessly back to the source of all love, which is our own inner sun? The responsibility of the freed prisoner, Plato said, is to go back into the cave, not to gloat, not to feel superior, but with immense compassion. To understand that everyone is in a cave of their own making, chained by fear, habit, and desire. And the only way to help them is not with complex arguments, but with love. To be, for one other person, a reflection of that sun. We end where we began, with a sound. The drip of water in the cave, but perhaps now you hear it differently. It is not just a sound of isolation. It is the patient, persistent sound of transformation, of water wearing away stone, drop by drop. It is the sound of the journey itself. And we end with Rumi's own words, a perfect, quiet summary of it all: the longing, the search, the discovery, the love.
I once had 1,000 desires, but after I found the one desire of my heart, all others melted away.
Thank you for listening.